Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us. I've been super excited about this session for many months. I feel like Dr. Beischel and I connected almost like a year ago, thanks to Elsa Swires, who's on this call. And Jim, do you mind forwarding to the next slide there? Yeah, so I just want to thank those of you who donated to underwrite the expenses associated with this session, and there are many of you, and we are so grateful. We'd also like to acknowledge our organizational sponsors. Next slide. I know many of you come each month, so I'm not going to repeat everything, but you can see everyone here on the slide, and we're really just so honored that they place their trust and resources in our educational work. Next slide, Jen. Is this okay? So I want to introduce. So you'll notice that David Fife, our normal sidekick, is not here tonight. He's in Detroit at the Grantmakers in Aging Conference. He's been there all week. So we roped in one of our board members, Jan Story, to join us tonight. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jan, who's going to facilitate our evening with Dr. Beischel. Jan.
Thank you, Julie and Jennifer, and welcome to everyone who has joined us today. We're thrilled to have Dr. Julie Beischel here presenting with us tonight, and I personally am very passionate about the topics that she's going to cover, which is another reason I know Julie asked me to facilitate tonight. So I can't wait for you all to meet her. A few things about Dr. Beischel. She's the co-founder and director of research at the Windbridge Research Center, specializing in afterlife studies, mediumship, and survival of consciousness. She's scientifically grounded. She holds a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology from the University of Arizona. She's focused on grief research and on how mediumship supports coping with loss, blending both scientific insights and practical mental health applications. She's a published author and sought-after speaker, and is frequently presenting her research at international conferences and in academic publications. She is also recognized as a leader in after-death communication, contributing to broader understanding of human consciousness through the study of mediums. So we're very fortunate to have her here tonight. We have been talking about this all year, so we're excited to have Dr. Beischel here. She's pre-recorded a special session for us tonight, but then she will take live Q&A through the chat. So please send all your questions into the chat. We will review those and address them after the presentation is over. So without further delay, let's watch the video.
Hello, I'm Dr. Julie Beischel, and today I'll be talking about our connection to the other side. So there are no surprises. This is the outline of the content I'll be covering today. First, I'll go over some background. Then I'll review the research from the fields of end-of-life experiences, near-death experiences, and experiences of after-death communication that demonstrate that the love we share with our human and animal loved ones continues past their deaths. Finally, I'll suggest some ways you can actually feel your continued connections through the recognition of signs and through what I call co-created crafts. Some background about grief. Since the time of Freud, experiences of contact with someone who had died were often considered counterproductive for healing and even viewed as pathological. Freud actually called these types of experiences hallucinatory wishful psychosis. This idea was adopted by the clinical community and was used well into at least the 1950s, and by some grief counselors even today. However, decades of research have now demonstrated that recognizing what are called continuing bonds between the living and the departed is a healthier and more realistic goal for many people. The bereaved can recognize that their relationship with the departed has changed from being in the physical to being spiritual or non-physical. They can recognize that their relationship has not ended, it has just transformed. This new type of relationship aids the bereaved in coping with the physical loss. Indeed, people all over the world across different cultures continue their relationships with the deceased in often fulfilling and meaningful ways. And even people who don't believe in an afterlife can experience a connection to their departed loved ones. It's best not to get hung up by the terminology. Moreover, much evidence exists demonstrating that the mind or soul or consciousness can function separate from the brain and is only barely associated with the body during physical life. In addition, several areas of research show that consciousness continues to exist after the death of the physical body. But we don't have time today to cover all of that. So if you are interested, I will kindly refer to you to chapter 4 of my book, Love in the Afterlife, titled, How is an Afterlife Even Possible? Let's move on to research. Numerous fields of study demonstrate that, in addition to our continuing bond with them, the love we shared with our human and animal loved ones also continues past their deaths. This includes end-of-life dreams and visions, ELDVs, near-death experiences, NDEs, and experiences of after-death communication, ADCs. Let's start with end-of-life dreams and visions. These can occur while awake or asleep. And although hallucinations and delirium are common in hospice patients, these usually include disorganized thinking and anxiety. ELDVs, on the other hand, are recalled and reported as involving clarity of mind, clear perceptions, and an awareness of one's surroundings. They are usually comforting and evoke a sense of inner peace in the patient. ELDVs help patients reconnect with their loved ones and point directly to the importance of love throughout our physical lives and beyond. ELDVs demonstrate that continuing bonds begin to form between the dying patient and the living people they will leave behind, even before the death occurs. And seeing a dying loved one interact with their own departed loved ones, the caregiver is also comforted that the current relationship and the love they feel for each other will continue. The current leading experts in this field are arguably fifth-generation physician Christopher Kerr and his team at Hospice and Palliative Care Buffalo in New York. By interviewing hospice patients daily over many months, Dr. Kerr and his team found several common categories of ELDVs, which are often described by patients as being more real than real. ELDVs often include feeling a comforting presence of departed family, friends, and companion animals, and the sense of loved ones waiting for the patient to pass on. But this is not some weird new occurrence that only happens in Buffalo. Kerr put it in context like this. This is a long quote, but I think it's a good one, so bear with me. These moments of life-affirming enlightenment at the time of death have been acknowledged across cultures and throughout history, from writers, poets, and philosophers as far back as ancient Greece, from Buddhist and Islamic texts, from the religious and sacred traditions of Native Americans and other indigenous peoples around the world. Meaningful pre-death dreams and visions have been widely recognized and celebrated. If anything, the medicalization of death has obscured a language integral to humanity's need to maintain connection with the departed. This awareness that we remain intertwined beyond death is central to the story of our shared humanity. The researchers at Hospice Buffalo video recorded most of their interviews with the terminal patients. For example, this is Alice. Alice had an experience where she encountered her departed mother, father, brother, husband, and son. Alice reported that when her mother held out her hand, Alice felt this enormous love beyond anything she ever felt coming from her mother during her physical life. She said she knew her mother loved her when she was alive, but this love was so warm and enveloping. I never felt that much intense love in my life. These end-of-life experiences often seem to serve the purpose of letting patients like Alice know that their departed loved ones are okay, and when they themselves pass, they'll be okay too. Let's move on to near-death experiences, or NDEs. Since NDEs were brought into the public eye in the mid-1970s with the publication of the book Life After Life, an enormous amount of NDE research has taken place. Through these cases, it is clear that love is a primary component of the afterlife. The Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, founded by Jeffrey and Jody Long, has collected thousands of survey responses and personal accounts of NDEs. In an analysis of these postings to find the words most often used to describe these experiences, it was discovered that the two most common words were light and love. The NDERF survey asks respondents if they acquired information about love specifically during their experience. More than 57% responded yes. To put this in perspective, a much higher percentage of respondents answered yes to this question than to the survey questions about other well-known characteristics of NDEs, such as experiencing a tunnel, a life review, and encountering deceased loved ones. The descriptions of NDEs collected by the NDERF describe the presence of love on the other side using phrases like the paramount element of reality, a warmth of love that I have never experienced on earth, total and complete love, love is all that exists after this life, and after earthly life comes love. From these near-death experiences, it is clear that where we go after leaving our bodies is a place of love. Let's move on to experiences of after-death communication. An experience that involves contact with or messages from the departed is termed an after-death communication, or ADC. ADCs are common and healthy. They're not weird or rare or a sign of mental illness. ADCs have been reported in all known cultures across the world since time immemorial. There are several types of ADCs. Today, we'll focus on spontaneous and assisted ADCs. Spontaneous ADCs, or SADCs, are, as the name implies, unexpected. SADCs are likely the most common type of ADC. Although SADCs are often called extraordinary or even paranormal, they are actually normal human experiences. And although they can vary in intensity and impact, SADCs in general are a natural part of the grieving process. All types of people, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, education level, income, type of death, time passed since the death, socioeconomic standing, or religious practice, have SADCs. They may offer comfort and peace and alleviate anxiety and despair. Spontaneous SADCs may involve hearing meaningfully timed songs on the radio or other music associated with the departed. Anomalies with electric devices may also occur. However, most SADCs do not involve electronics or other apparatuses beyond what we call the human instrument, as all you need are your senses and an open mind. SADCs can also include, but are not limited to, seeing the form of the departed loved one or other visual phenomena, hearing the voice of the departed or other auditory experiences, and smelling a scent or odor associated with the departed, like smoke, perfume, or cologne. Phenomena in which the experiencer feels the touch of the departed or other physical sensations also occur. One of the most common experiences is simply sensing the presence of the departed. You just have the sense that the departed is close. These sense of presence experiences and their resulting positive impact on grief through the demonstration of a continuing bond have been thoroughly researched. Another common type of spontaneous ADCs are dreams. This makes sense. Dreams involve an altered state of consciousness that people regularly experience, so the possibility for contact is significant. The dream state allows for the quieting of the frontal cortex and of our analytical, reasoning, and logical capacities to, shut up. This in turn is conducive to communication with the departed. Some researchers prefer to use the term sleep ADC rather than dream ADC because unlike normal REM dreams, these ADC experiences usually feel subjectively real. It's the difference between dreaming about someone and dreaming with them. Additionally, these sleep ADCs are often remembered in great detail for years, which doesn't usually occur with regular REM dreams. SADCs can evolve connections to departed people or animals. People often have spontaneous experiences of their departed animal loved ones, such as hearing their vocalizations or other sounds associated with them. You might see a form or feel a warmth or pressure on your body where the animal once cuddled. Because love is love regardless of species, it follows logically that the motivation to communicate once the animal has died would be similar to that which arises after the death of a human loved one. At my organization, the Windbridge Research Center, we received a small pilot grant for a research program focusing specifically on people's connections with their departed companion animals. We have named this new endeavor the Animal Survival of Consciousness ANSWER research program. With our collaborator, Harvard researcher Lisa Comboy, we have several quantitative and qualitative ANSWER research projects planned and look forward to being able to share them in the future once they are performed and completed. We have also collected ADC reports for an educational initiative named Audrey's Project, where we transform people's ADCs into multimedia videos in order to normalize these types of experiences. Many Audrey's Project reports included dreams and experiences with animals. Similarly, on the After Death Communication Research Foundation's website, adcrf.org, you can read real people's after-death communication reports in their own words and/or share your own experiences. One contributor, Marcia, shared a series of ADCs that convey how our departed animal loved ones are able to continue connecting with us and sharing their love. Soon after Marcia's cat Rosa died, she started receiving auditory, visual, tactile, and other signs. She has heard a quick purr or a meow or Rosa moving around or drinking out of her water bowl. Marcia also had a powerful dream ADC where Rosa visited her. We don't have time today, but in the book Love in the Afterlife, I have shared this and other animal ADCs and other dream ADCs, including one where my husband Mark had a dream ADC with his mom. You can also learn more about that experience on the Windbridge Research Center website at windbridge.org. Now let's move on to assisted after-death communication experiences, or AADCs. An AADC occurs during a reading with a medium. Although contact with the departed is an ancient phenomenon and it's possible for anyone to experience communication, a medium is someone who has this experience regularly, reliably, and often on demand. A psychic, on the other hand, regularly experiences information about or from living people, distant locations or events, and/or times in the future or in the past unknown to them. It is often said that all mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. During an event called a mediumship reading, a medium shares messages they receive from the departed with people called sitters, the living friends or relatives who wish to receive those messages. The sitters receiving the messages from their departed loved ones through the medium are having assisted after-death communication experiences. The sitters are not directly experiencing communication. They are being assisted by the medium to connect with their departed loved ones. I've been performing controlled laboratory research with mediums for more than 20 years. The team of research mediums I work with are certified. They were tested, screened, and trained over several months using an intensive peer-reviewed 8-step procedure. Upon successful completion of the 8 steps, mediums are termed Windbridge certified research mediums, which in-house we pronounce WCRMs. We use a quintuple blind protocol with 5 levels of controls. These methods were vetted and peer-reviewed at least 4 times by multiple qualified experts. That quintuple-blind Windbridge protocol was used to examine accuracy scores for 58 phone readings performed by 20 pre-screened and certified mediums. The results were statistically significant and address alternative explanations for the medium's accuracy. The findings demonstrate that some mediums can report true information about the departed without having to use any mischief or monkey business. And these are not fluke findings. A meta-analysis of 14 studies of mediums' accuracy, published since 2001, concluded that some mediums are able to acquire information about deceased persons through some unknown or anomalous means. The information reported by mediums during assisted ADCs appears to be similar to that of spontaneous ADCs. It can involve people and animals, allow sitters to recognize that their relationships still exist, and assures them of their continuing bonds. Now let's talk about mediums and love. Mediums refer to, experience, and share love all the time. For example, one medium talked about her experiences when communicating with the departed like this. When I connect with somebody on the other side, everything's happy and great. I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. I lose myself. My identity is gone. Who cares who I am? I'm just part of the universe. I'm part of love energy. It's like I'm connecting with that sacred love, that universal love on the other side, even though it's just in tiny little bits for a moment. Another medium in our research stated that after the session is over, I feel a sense of deep love and sometimes ecstatic joy as the energies of the departed leave me and I become myself again. Another reported that the energy of love is the bond between the physical and spiritual worlds. The Windbridge accuracy testing uses a tremendously complex system, but there are many free resources on the Windbridge Research Center website at windbridge.org summarizing the quintuple blind protocol and the study findings. And surprise, surprise, I also talk about all this in my book, Love and the Afterlife, where I also suggest things that you can do before, during, and after a mediumship reading to optimize the process for everybody involved. Based on the evidence from end-of-life dreams and visions, near-death experiences, and experiences of after-death communication, it is clear that the love we shared with our human and animal loved ones continues past their deaths, and we can experience this love across the veil. Now that we've covered some background and research, let's cover specific ways you can feel these continued connections to your own departed loved ones. These include the recognition of signs and engaging in what I call co-created crafts. Signs from the departed usually involve normal, seemingly mundane events. They have to be realistic and possible. It is the timing of signs that is special, not necessarily the signs themselves. It is you noticing the sign in a sea of constant input that is meaningful. For example, you noticing a specific bird at a specific time may be a sign. The bird existed before you noticed it and will hopefully live a fulfilling life afterward. The bird is not the sign. You noticing the bird is the sign. Similarly, license plates, butterflies, flowers, and rainbows objectively exist and are available for anyone to see. They become signs when you see them at meaningful times or in significant ways. Learning to recognize which ones feel different will make actual signs that much more meaningful. Perhaps the most important thing one can do to optimize the possibility of experiencing a sign or ADC of any kind is to be open to it. Like with any loving two-way relationship, you can't control the actions of your departed loved one. You may need to just be grateful for any contact they're capable of. Assumptions about when or what the signs are just roadblocks to connecting. Ideally, you just need to be patient and trusting. Some other examples of signs include animals, birds, or insects, coincidences or synchronicities, specific scents or odors, feathers, specific sounds or music, specific weather events, plants, a specific date, time, number, coins, a letter, word, or piece of writing, hearing or reading your loved one's name. One way you can request an ADC from your departed loved one is through what I call co-created crafts. Most grief professionals recognize crafts as useful for honoring your departed loved one and supporting a continuing bond. However, I've never heard of any of them going as far as I am. I'm suggesting you make art with your departed loved one. Co-created crafts employ randomness or serendipity that a consciousness can influence in order to help make artistic decisions during the creation of the craft. By using elements like rolling dice, spinning a lazy Susan, or using random number generating software, you can invite your loved one to influence your art. With this method, your departed loved one is given an opportunity to participate in the choices. Because it's their consciousness potentially affecting the random systems, in order to connect with you, your loved one didn't need to like crafts or even be able to hold a pencil during their physical lives. It's their essence you're working with. You can invite your departed dog, for example, to fetch or get it as you roll a die. Perhaps they stop the rolling die to help you choose a color, a bead, or a word. There's no way to prove they did, but no way to prove they didn't. Making art together with your departed loved one serves to establish and reinforce a continuing bond with them, and the recognition of a continuing bond can help alleviate grief. For your craft, consider choosing art supplies made for children. They are cheaper, require less dexterity, and usually clean up relatively easily. One simple craft is coloring. The first step is to choose an image and 3 or 4 colors you like. A selection of fewer colors makes for a more sophisticated looking end product. Then pick a segment in the image. Without looking, allow your departed loved one to inspire you to pick a color for that segment. If you mind purple trees or orange grass, it might be best to choose an abstract design as your image. Use that color for that shape throughout the image. As you engage in the meditative act of coloring, be mindful of your departed loved one participating in the creation. Let your mind wander and notice the content that pops into your head. Be aware of any physical sensations that you feel. If you become uncomfortable at any point, just stop. If inspired to, once finished, hang the page you and your loved one made together on the fridge or in a frame, where it can remind you of your continuing bond with them, or recycle it if you want. Maybe it was just about the experience. Maybe make a ritual of tearing it into strips and imagining your grief lessening with each rip. Do whatever you want. Your relationship remains strong regardless of the fate of that page. You don't even need a fancy coloring book. You can use the squares of the newspaper crossword puzzle, or Sudoku, or the back of a grocery list and a regular pen. It doesn't matter if the final image is all color black, if you felt it was co-created. No one needs to see it. It's just for the two of you. Creative endeavors are beneficial for anyone's mental and physical health. The act of creating may reduce stress, limit the brain's aging, and improve quality of life. Crafts cultivate intuition, inspiration, and spontaneity. For the grieving especially, arts and crafts can help represent emotions that are hard to put into words. They help demonstrate a sense of control over the external world when the internal one can feel overwhelming. I hope that what you can take with you from this talk is the knowledge that the love we shared with our human and animal loved ones continues past their deaths, as demonstrated through research on end-of-life dreams and visions, near-death experiences, and after-death communication experiences. I hope you will also remember that you can feel your continued connections to the departed through the recognition of signs and the production of things like co-created crafts. If you would like to learn more about any of these topics, I recommend the free resources provided by the Windbridge Research Center at windbridge.org. We share free podcast episodes, fact sheet PDFs, articles, videos, and a peer-reviewed journal focusing on interdisciplinary studies of consciousness as it relates to dying, death, and what comes next. I also recommend these books by Christopher Kerr, Jeffrey Long, Laura Lynn Jackson, and me, Julie Beischel. Thank you so much for your attention.
Go ahead, Jen.
Okay. Yeah, looks like we do have a question in the chat. So Peter is asking, how can one distinguish between an ADC that occurs in my living brain from contact with the spirit of the departed?
Oh, hit me with a hard one right off. Okay. So to be like transparent, I have been struggling with my health for many, many months now, and it's hard for me to think clearly, so I'm going to do my best for your questions. But okay, let's see. So an ADC is defined as after-death communication. And so if you feel like it was a connection with the departed, then it was. And so I think that's what gets people in a lot of trouble is they're like, oh, well, it's just my imagination. And your friends will tell you, oh, it's just your imagination. But that's not what it is. If you like, don't let yourself or other people steal that from you. That's how it works. Like they inspire you for those things to pop into your head. Pardon me. I will show you this. So there were a lot of, I knew that grieving people didn't always have a weekend to go to a workshop or the time to read a whole book or those sorts of things. So I released this deck of cards, and it's mostly about grief, but some of them are signs. So you shuffle them, and once a day you pick a card. And if you get a signs card, then it says, today I will be open to noticing a flower or a plant. And so then for the rest of the day, or when I've used it, I do what happened yesterday. So I pick a card the next day and I said, give me some feedback on what I experienced yesterday. And so then if you've picked a card, in my book, I go through a couple of the examples of me using this and my mom. And then I kind of had to stop because they were such powerful experiences, the first two that I picked, so I stopped using it. But the first card I picked, let me tell you a little background. Someone stop me if this is too much. I live right behind a cemetery, and often a bagpipe player plays, he or she practices playing Amazing Grace. And my mom hated that song, Amazing Grace. She always groaned if we had to sing it in church. She hated it. So I told her, hey, we live next to the cemetery. If you're going to be around, you're going to experience this song that you hate. And I told my husband, wouldn't it be weird if I pulled the card about music? Guess which card I pulled that day? The card about music. So like it's this external thing that you don't have to say, oh, was that just my imagination? Is that just my wishful thinking? Like, no, that card has the word music on it. That's sort of like it's a oh, my brain. It's a nice objective way to verify this subjective experience that you had. So that's what I wanted to give people a way that it could be okay for them to have these continued relationships with their departed loved ones. And so that's why I made that deck of cards. That is so much more than you asked for.
That was great. Thank you so much. Great answer. Okay, so we have another question about the mediums. So when you say you vetted the mediums, what were the 8 things?
Oh, so we stopped testing mediums a few years ago. It was for a granted project. So we got a grant to build a team that we could then do other projects with. And so we've stopped doing that a really long time ago, but and again, my brain is a little mushy, but it was only one of them was actual test readings. So they like filled out questionnaires. They were interviewed by a research team member. They were interviewed by the other mediums on the team. They did some basic grief training, but only one of them was actual testing. And so what they did, this is super complex, but I'll do the short version. And this is all like, we're very transparent. You can read about this in the journal article and in a lot of places on our website and in my old publications. But what we did was each medium read for 2 deceased people and on the phone with me, and I served as what's called the proxy sitter. And so the absent sitter did not hear the readings as they took place. They scored a transcription of an itemized list of the items that were said during the reading, and they didn't know which one was there. So I was blinded. I didn't know anything about the deceased or the sitter. The medium was blinded. She didn't know anything either. All we had was the first name of the deceased person. The sitter was blinded when they got the readings to score, because one was theirs and one wasn't, and they didn't know which was which. And then there, besides me, there are 2 other experimenters interacting with the sitter before the study and after the scoring. So that's why we call it 5 quintuple blind, because there are 5 levels of blinding that eliminate or at least control for or address other things of where a skeptic would go, oh, it's just this. Well, no, it's not, because we took care of all those things, even telepathy with the sitter, because we don't give the medium feedback about their reading, specific feedback. So they like that's a skeptical viewpoint is, oh, they're just reading the future where you give them the feedback about how they did. Like, no, we don't even do that. So this quintuple blind protocol eliminates all these other things. But so it was mostly, we were trying to build a team of research mediums. So they need, one of the 8 steps was they had to understand the history of mediumship research and like what's involved in blinding and what we have to be careful of, because we're working with human subjects, because they're human subjects, and so they needed to know those sorts of things. So only the testing was only one of the steps, but we were trying to build a team of research mediums. So we weren't testing like, so we list the mediums that we certified on our website, and all we can say about that list is they passed that test on that day with those deceased people. I can't say they're going to be good for you. I can't say they could do it again today. That's all we can say is we had this test and they passed that test. I feel like you have a different question that you are really wanting me to answer. So I'm happy to answer a follow-up on that one.
Okay, so that was from Happy. So Happy, if you have more detail that you want answered or more of a question that you want answered, please add that to the chat. We'll go ahead and take Elsa's question. Her question is, what about deceased loved ones coming to visit in the form of an animal or a bird especially?
Yeah, that's a really common sign And like I said, the bird is not the sign. You noticing the bird is the sign. And I say that because I'm quick to caution people about that, because if you're like, oh, that butterfly is my deceased loved one coming to visit. Sorry, I'm a scientist, so I'm used to saying deceased, but in my book and stuff, I say departed, and I'm just not used to saying it, so I apologize. That butterfly is my departed loved one, and then a bird comes and eats it. Like that would be very traumatic, but that's what birds and butterflies do. So it's not, and that's how the bird survives. So there's nothing against that. There's no problem with that. But that's why I caution people about, it's not the butterfly that's your departed loved one. It's you noticing the butterfly, that's the sign. You were inspired to, turn your head that way, or they inspired the butterfly to fly by then. So that's how to stay protected, that you're not going to see nature be nature, and that might be traumatic. So I think that's important for people. But yeah, birds and critters of all kinds can be signs from the departed.
Thank you for that. So we do have more information from Happy.
Okay.
Also, Julie, your question is very much connected to that too. So Julie's question was, how can you distinguish a real medium from someone who is a charlatan? And in that same aspect, the other question is, I'm curious about mediums because so many are literally lying, but I've known a couple who are legitimate. So curious how to check.
That's a tough question. And like in my book, I dedicate 3 chapters to how to get a good mediumship reading. And I think the first thing to remember is there are 3 people involved in a mediumship reading, and the medium is only one of them. So you have to be a good sitter. Your departed has to be willing and able. Like, we don't know, maybe some departed people can't do it. I had one mediumship reading my whole life, and my grandmother came through first to show my mom how to do it. So we don't know how this works. We know it's definitely not a phone call. A medium can't just like ring up anyone they want. The departed has to choose the medium, has to visit the medium, and the sitter has to be ready. And sometimes the departed will make the decision that the sitter isn't, like, it's going to do more harm than good for the sitter, so they just don't come through. So I know there are a lot of people who are taking advantage, not a lot, but are taking advantage of the grieving, like just like there are a lot of other professions. But in my book, I go through what you can do to protect yourself, is know you're hiring a contractor, so become aware of the like return policy or whatever it's called, because then they can't hurt you. And if you're like, okay, this could be a problem, then what I recommend is that you say, I'm only comfortable with answering questions about, does this make sense to you? And then just answer yes, no, maybe, sort of, or I don't know. And then if they push you, well, tell me how long your person has lived. What? No, I told you, all I can answer is, does that make sense to you? And if they're not comfortable with that, go, okay, I would like my money back, please. So you can't be taken advantage of if you go into it mindfully and you have thought about it and you take the other advice that I have in my book, because it's just a contractor, right? And so if you recognize that, maybe they're not good, maybe this one isn't good, then you can move on. But if I'm always suspect to people who go, oh, I've had like 3 readings and the medium is always, well, guess what the common denominator is there? It's you. Maybe it's not these mediums, maybe you're having unrealistic expectations, because that same person that said that to me also said a medium should be able to, and then she had this whole big list. No, none of those things are realistic of what you think a medium should be able to do. So I'm not surprised you had bad readings because you had unrealistic expectations. But if you remember that it's not perfect, it's not like what you see on TV, and just think about it like, well, maybe I'll get to feel like I hung out with my departed loved one today. And you're not expecting it to be groundbreaking or but most good mediums don't want to hear from you. Like Laurel and Jackson is a medium on our team, and she calls it don't feed the medium. So don't tell them about your person, don't tell them about you. They'll get there, and you would be surprised at the kinds of things. And don't try and test them like, I got that under control, I've done enough of that, you don't need to do. And if you like make a code and you're like, oh, if the medium says the code, then they're real. No, because you know the answer to the code. So all that demonstrates is that they're a good psychic. So don't make a code, don't try and test them. The best thing you can do is be like zen and open and patient and trusting, and do your due diligence about what it's like to hire this contractor, because that's what it is. It's very complex. So again, I spent 3 chapters in my book on this. So I hope that's a little bit of hint to what you need. Is that, Julie, did you get what you needed?
All right, thumbs up on that. Okay, we have a couple more that have come in. So there is a question. This individual has had 8 deaths in the family in the last 3 years, and finding it overwhelming, feeling of loss and feeling alone. Can you address deep grief and how to move forward if feeling stuck? And yeah, go ahead.
I am not a clinician, and so that sounds like psychological suffering. So you should speak to someone who can help you with dealing with that psychological suffering. That is not my wheelhouse. I talk about this in my book too. While you are trying to pick someone to talk to, a professional to talk to, you can say, hey, I would like to include after death experiences and beliefs as part of my care. Is that something you're open to? And a lot of them are not. My colleague, Beth Christopherson, and I wrote a paper, and it trains clinicians. She is a clinician, Christopherson is. It trains clinicians because they don't receive any training and in their standard schooling about addressing afterlife beliefs and experiences. So this paper that we wrote, and like we've made videos and there's a fact sheet and all kinds of things, that it helps clinicians sort of fill that void that they didn't get in their training. So if you already see a therapist that you're happy with, and now this has happened and you want to talk about these things with a therapist, you can point them to these resources that we have about this instrument that they can use.
Thank you. Dr. Beischel, there's another question which I'm not sure if this is one that you can answer, about past life regression.
I haven't done any research on that topic,
okay.
so I cannot.
Okay, that's what I wondered. There was also a request in the chat for the book slide. I hope that Megan, you saw the message that you will get the slides after the event is over. So you will get the slide and can see that slide again.
Hey, Jan.
Yes.
Did you see the question from Jerry, or the statement from Jerry right above about the regression?
Oh, right. I think it's a statement. My sister shows up as a butterfly often for me, and my grandfather would help find lost objects, and also showed up as the garage door opening and closing on its own. Yep. Let's see. It looks like, where can we find the guide for clinicians?
Okay, so if you go to wimbridge.org and there's a button somewhere on that front page, I think, and it's called Pick Your Path. And so it's like for the curious, for the psychics, for clinicians, for scientists. So if you go to the for clinicians page, it's cited there. And we just did a podcast episode about that instrument, so I'll make sure that gets up there on that page, because I don't think it's up there on that page yet.
Jan, if it's okay, I'm just gonna jump in and say something to Julie's point about like the sign as you noticing. So this whole we've been doing a lot of grief support workshops, both Grief 101 and on survivors of suicide loss. And it's the same thing. It's like, you know, the expert is not outside you, right? You are the expert. It's just finding your trust in that. And so I love that lines up so beautifully, right? Like kind of a different, obviously a different track, but very same, like you have the wisdom. We have the wisdom in us. And so it's you noticing and you making meaning, right, out of the thing.
Yeah. I caution people, don't try and prove it to someone else. It's not for them. And if they're not 100% on board, it's just going to like sully your experience. So just accept it, that it's just between you and your departed loved one. You don't need someone else to vet it, to believe it. It's not for them. It's just for you. Oh, can I say something else real fast? So you're going to give the PDF of the slides afterwards. Okay, so there's a slide, the very last slide on that PDF wasn't in this presentation, and it's an invitation to join a couple different email lists. So please take a look at that last slide on that PDF.
Great. Good reminder. We have a couple more that have come in. So there's an academic question. Is there increasing acceptance in the professional community of these experiences as important ways to support grief?
You were cutting out a little bit, but can you just repeat the question?
Yeah. Is there an increasing acceptance in the professional community of these experiences as important ways to support grief?
Not in my experience. It's not in the standard training, though the World Health Organization recognizes that like religion and spirituality are important for health. That never goes as far as after death communication. So it's not there yet, but there are pockets of people that are open to these kinds of things. Like I know there are mediums who work with therapists and vice versa. So they're like, you can find them, but it's not every therapist.
Okay, and then I think there's one more question. We've got lots of great stories and examples and things coming in the chat. So thank you all for adding those. We also have a question about suicide deaths and if there's anything unique about the way of passing in afterlife.
I have some colleagues that wrote a whole book about suicide in the afterlife. Pam Heath and silly brain, John, what is his name? Anyway, her name is Heath, Heath, and it's suicide is in the title of the book. So you should be able to find that.
Great, thank you.
Klimo, John Klimo, Klimo. Good
Thank
job,
you.
brain.
Any other questions from the group? We've had lots of great questions.
I just, that last comment by Megan says, when I dream about my mom, she looks like her, but like she threw on a costume of clothes that are a little odd, and sometimes her eyes look bigger than usual. So it's a statement, but it made me think, can you talk a bit about the significance, right, of maybe symbols or different look. I saw in your list of books, there was one all about signs, but if you could just talk a little bit about what are some of the common things and their meaning or.
I think it's always independent. It's always unique to you. So what might be my sign, like when I see a yellow flower, it might mean one thing to me, but when you see it, it might mean something else. So one of the things that I talk about in my book about how to prepare for, experience, and reflect on a mediumship reading is during the reading, ask the medium, what signs can I use to know my departed is trying to communicate with me, and like let your departed loved one choose the sign. One of the cards in my card deck is today I will be open to noticing which sign my departed wants to use moving forward. So you can leave it up to them and like, oh, I saw the number 4 like a bunch of times today. Oh, okay, now whenever I see 4, I will think of it like that. But it's very, even among mediums, the content of the symbolism is very unique to each medium. So what that symbol means to one may mean something totally different. It's just through practice and experience that they understand what that sign means.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's kind of goes back to the wisdom piece, right? To trust our intuition, to me, that's the main message. Like,
Yeah.
Trust your intuition. Don't be made to feel like it's silly or it's not meaningful, right?
There's nothing spiritual about the number 4. Well, there probably is. And don't quote me. Don't yell at me. There probably is in some cultures. But it's what it means to you and your experiences of it. And don't let anyone sully your experience. Like you can't prove that is a sign, but they can't prove it's not. And keep that in mind.
Someone that I've worked with told me once that the more you ask for that sign to appear, the more you see it. Like you continue to, look for it, talk about it, ask for it, and they will continue to appear more frequently. Is that something you've heard?
No, that's not something we've looked at specifically. Again,
Yeah.
it's your thing. It's your,
Right.
just like your, I'm going to say a grown-up naughty word, but just like your sex life with your partner was unlike anybody else's, like your continued relationship with them is going to be unlike anybody else's. And so don't let stories that you hear or, things you hear from even people that you trust sully this experience that you have with your departed loved one. Like just
trust me, our departed loved ones are still participating in our lives, and they brought love. That's their jam, is love.
That's great. Okay, we have another question in the chat. Is the consciousness of the departed one in the sign?
I don't know if I understand that. No, I think the answer is no. Again, the sign is not the sign. You noticing the sign is the sign. So there's a quote from Deepak Chopra, and he was like, "Where was my father in his life? He was in my consciousness. Where was he when he was in the hospital? He was in my consciousness. Where is he now that he's died? He's in my consciousness." So, and there's lots of philosophical arguments about we can't actually prove the existence of objective reality beyond what's inside our own consciousness. So, this gets way above my pay grade. But again, I want everyone to be careful. The butterfly is not the departed loved one. You noticing the butterfly is the sign.
Yeah. We did have someone, Megan, comment, "I can't wait to read your book." So
Thank you.
That's great feedback.
Exclusively on Amazon.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
I can take one more and then I have to bow out.
Okay, here's one. Last one. What if you feel the presence of someone else's loved one and they give you a message to pass on? How do you know how or whether to pass it on or not?
That's a tough one. I mean, you could say like, because sometimes that happens because that person, your friend or whatever, isn't getting the sign, and they're like, well, you're open to this, and they try and get you to do it. So you have to be careful because that person isn't getting the sign because maybe they're not open to this. And so you don't want to push it. You don't want to ruin your friendship with that person by like spouting your nonsense that Dr. Beischel taught you. So you can sort of very softly, gently be like, oh, I went to this Roots and Roots presentation and this person talked about this. Like, have you ever thought of that? And like, but be careful. It'd be my first word of advice. The mediums on our team follow a list of like ethics, and number one on the list is I will never provide a reading to someone who didn't ask for it. So the mediums tell me stories like the deceased person is yelling in the grocery store line like, that's my husband, you have to tell him, and they go, no, I'm not going to tell him because he might not be ready for it. So they say, you inspire your husband to talk to me, and then sometimes that happens and the husband's like, oh, hi, it's nice to meet you. What do you do for a living? And then they go, oh, I'm a medium. I talk to deceased people. And then it opens it up. But you can't, like, this is a really touchy subject. I'm so happy and excited and grateful that all of you came to this, because this is a really weird topic. And it doesn't fit in a lot of people's worldviews. And you can, like I said, you can ruin friendships and things by like being the person that always wants to talk about dead people. So be careful in bringing that up. But yeah, that is how that works sometimes, that the person like really wants to get their message across and the living person isn't hearing it. Well, then you have to say, I can't interrupt my friend's life if she's not ready to hear what you have to say. So you're going to have to find another way, or inspire her to ask me what I think about signs. And then they can go, oh, but yeah, be careful of, like saying that you had this experience, because some people are not ready, and then you're gonna just hurt your relationship with them. Does that make sense?
Great advice. Thank you, Dr. Beischel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Should I turn this back over, Julie or Jennifer, to you?
Sure, yes. Thanks so much, Julie. I am really, really grateful, and I think the Amazon, there's a bunch of books in the carts, I feel like, right about now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I gotta feed my puppies.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is that we are open to sharing information when people bring it up as an interest. So we're sometimes I feel like we're a little on the edge, and that's okay, because there's no right way about any of this, right? It's just like, what's calling us? And so I'm glad to be able to highlight your work. And I will say that we will be sending you all the slides. We also will be sending you a survey. And I think, Jen, I don't know, like tomorrow or early next week.
The survey will be hitting your mailboxes at 7:30 tonight. And then tomorrow we will have the PDF slides up on the website.
Right. And then the video, we record everything, and it'll include the video that Dr. Beischel pre-recorded for us. That will be up probably in a week or two, something like that. And then we have a couple, next slide, please. Next month, Dementia, Grief, and Caregiving, sponsored by Pima Council on Aging, and that will round out this year, which has been focused squarely on grief. And then we're really excited coming up in 2025. Next slide, please. Next year, we're going to continue focusing on grief, but also what are rituals that we may use to help us make sense of our experiences, and hopefully find some comfort in the memories. And so I think we have what, Jen, 3? Yep. Okay. So Dr. Candy Can, for any of you who used to come to our in-person conference, she was right before COVID, she was our keynote speaker. She's a professor at Baylor in religious studies, and her work is studying grief rituals from around the world. So she will kick us off talking about, like, what is ritual, what's the importance of ritual, and then sharing some of the work and experiences she's had. And then in February, Dr. Ned Norris, who was the president of the Tohono O'odham Nation, he also does a lot of traditional work around death and dying. He'll be with us sharing from that point of view and that unique culture that's here in our beautiful desert. And then in March, it will be Dr. Sarah Hogan, who's a veterinarian, and talking about the bond, to your point, Julie, right? About it's animals are beings. And so what are some things we can do to help us as we grieve the loss of our beloved pets? So we hope that you tune in next month and sign up and join us again in 2025. Is there anything else, Jen, in our bag of tricks here, or is that? I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, just again, we're so grateful to everyone that donated. This slide kind of shows some of the ways that we can accept donations through our website. We partner with a couple of shopping apps. So as Christmas comes forward, if you're shopping for Thanksgiving, Walmart and Fry's, we are organizations listed on that. So a portion of your shopping can be donated to Roots and Roads if you select us as your charity. And then as we get ready for tax time, we just want to recognize again that we are now a qualified charitable organization for the Arizona Charitable Tax Credit, which is a dollar for dollar tax credit on your Arizona state taxes. So if you did make a donation, that will go to your 2024 taxes. And then, you can always go ahead if you want to plan for 2025. But thank you all for being here. And we hope we'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks, Dr. Beischel.
Thank you, everyone.